Let's start with Georgia. Obviously, they are the two-time defending national champions, back-to-back. Kirby Smart has a factory there in Athens. And Headley, I want to start with you in terms of, I think their top prospect, man. Of course, the last couple of seasons, the emphasis, the focus has been on the defense in terms of NFL draft prospects, but tight end Brock Bowers is the headliner here, man. And he's special. What do you think about him?
Yeah, big time prospect, tight end. We'll see where he gets drafted because we've seen tight ends go in the top 10 in previous drafts. You got Eric Ebron, Kyle Pitts, Hawkinson. Hawkinson coming along is late, but not really big impact players in the top 10. So I wonder if NFL teams will shy away from him in the top 10. But the talent is there, man. He's a top 10 talent in 2024 class. And Yak is his game. As he catches passes, he turns upfield quickly. He turns speed to power. He's hard to bring down. Not only the receiving, man, he's a willing and able blocker, run blocking as well. He'll mix it up in there as well. Comes down with tough catches across the middle of the field. He's a shifty route runner. He makes it look easy. It just is a little subtleness to his game. It's not real. What's the word? Abrasive. He's not really like.
Demonstrative with it.
Demonstrative. There goes another.
Demonstrative.
I'm looking for the adjective.
I know. I got you.
But he's not really like that. But he's just so subtle, and he's one of those rare tight ends where you can line him up outside. Line up outside like a Kelsey or a Gronk. Back in the days where run a fade route on the outside along the goal line, and he'll track the ball. He'll come down with the football. John Mackey Award winner. So it's a lot to like about Brock Bowers. The only thing I could knock him on, but it doesn't really affect his game, is he's kind of high, when he runs his routes, the hips and stuff like that. But it doesn't affect his game, man. He's a locomotive, like a Greg Kittle-like guy coming downhill.
Yeah, man, 6'4", 230. I can't complain. I would agree in terms of that last knock. But the rest, I don't even know what else to say, man. As far as I'm concerned, he's pretty much the complete package. If I had to, gripe about one thing, I want him away a little bit more just because I want him to be a little bit bigger. But he's hard to bring down, man, in the open field, man. He's dangerous. They used him in a couple of different ways in terms of halfback, end arounds, getting cute with him a little bit, so he was the guy, man. He is the guy. He was the offense, outside of the running backs. He was the offense in terms of the passing game for the Georgia Bulldogs, and I only see the sky's the limit for this guy. It's gonna be interesting to see how they use him this year and how the defense is key on him, man. But Headley hit all the points, man. Ding, 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 all the way around, man. He's a beast, man.
Tilt. No, definitely. Brock Bowers is very impressive. I mean, he's been doing it since day one. He steps on campus as a freshman and puts the SEC on its ear. Of course, he was a big part of that national championship run. Then, of course, coming back, he was the focal point of passing attack, as you mentioned, Drew. We're kind of nitpicking in terms of what he may need to work on. And the one thing that kind of stood out to me among everything, great hands. I mean, I've seen him beat double teams, where in that first game of the season when they faced Oregon, I remember watching the game live, went back and watched the tape again. But even live, they like to run that deep over route with him, right? So Oregon did the right thing. They put somebody right in his face, challenged him at the line of scrimmage, and then had another defender over top, and he still beat it. He still beat the double team with the physical jam at the line of scrimmage. So, I mean, really, really impressive athlete. Headley mentioned that he's not overly demonstrative, but he's just effective. You know what I'm saying? And got excellent straight line speed. Again, you'd like him to be a little bit bigger. As I alluded to, the one thing that I'd like to see him work on is it's not that he's an unwilling blocker. I just think he needs to have better footwork in his blocking, right? So when he climbs to the second level and he's seeking defenders out in space, he can get beat. He can get beat to the spot, right? And then, of course, when he engages them, his arms have a tendency to get a little too wide, which could be problematic. That's where you get holds. That's where the penalties come in when the defender is changing directions or the ball carrier behind you is changing directions. So just need to be cognizant of that. But I think if he is a little bit more effective and really understands the angles that he needs to take, he could be that much better of a blocker. He's not going to be a mauler in as an inline guy. That's not what we That's not what we want out of him. We want him to be competent in the running game as an inline blocker, but we really want him out there making plays. And of course, when he's split out wide in the slot, I mean, you could just give him, like you said, give him a end around and he could do damage. So really, really special player. I expect him to go top 10. I think he's going to go top 10. I haven't been this excited about a tight end coming out since I think Eric Ebron, and it just didn't quite work out with Ebron. There's actually some parallels in terms of how they were used, but I think Bowers has another kind of gear to him. You know what I mean? I think he's more effective at the catch point. Like I said, great hands, and the sky's the limit. I think ultimately where he lands will determine exactly whether or not an organization will be able to tap into all that talent. Of course, usage coaching is important, but yeah, he's a problem. I'm gonna put it that way. I'm gonna leave it there as we transition to the pivot in Athens at Georgia, Sedrick Van Pran. And Joe, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts on the big man in the middle of that offensive line?
Yeah, I think he's an outstanding mover. I love him at the second and third level. I like them getting him out on screens, draws, just doing different things with him. He'd probably be outstanding in a zone scheme. I think he'd play any scheme because of his ability to move. He's not a guy that's, obviously usually at the pivot, the center, as we call it, or as it's called. They're not guys that's going to move people out of the hole. It's usually guys that are going to seal people off. It's usually the guys that can move very well. It's why they play the position. Otherwise, sometimes it's because they are essentially just smaller, right? The issue that I have with him, and I think this may be a Georgia thing. Okay, I couldn't remember all the guys that got drafted recently from the offensive line from Georgia, but there is an issue. I just remember it in my notes, and I remember it in past drafts with people stating this specific thing is he'll drop his head. And I don't know, when he makes contact, he'll drop his head, or as he's making contact, he'll drop his head, hands are wide, and he's done like dinner. I don't know what that issue is or why that's something that happens, but it seems to happen to the Georgia offensive linemen. I don't know if that's, I'd imagine they're not teaching anybody anything like that, but it's just something that I'm starting to catch on to, and I'm starting to catch with these guys. But otherwise, man, he's pretty damn good, man, and he might be center one.
It's the same thing I mentioned with Bowers. For whatever reason, when they're making that initial contact, their hands, especially in space, and of course, you're trying to make sure you corral the defender, right, in order to obviously sustain a block. But you got to be a little bit more precise with your punch, particularly if you're playing along the offensive line. What about you, Heather? Your thoughts on Van Pran?
Yeah, first thing that popped up for me, he's super athletic. He gets to the second level with speed, athleticism. It really stands out on tape. But when he gets to the second level, kind of what you guys are saying, I just think he needs to be more aware. Sometimes he gets caught in no man land. To slow down a little bit. You're athletic, you could get there, but slow down, find the block, because he's a downhill locomotive, very twitchy. I think once he cleans up some of those technique issues like you guys are talking about, I think he can be a great player at the next level. I don't know about center one. I'm sure there's some other guys that are better than him. We haven't seen everyone yet, but I think he has little things to clean up. But he's a big body that that's hard to get around. I think his shorter arms, that's another knock for him. I think defenders with great hand technique could kind of beat him on the inside. I just think his hands need to get a little better. It's not going to get longer. His arms are what his arms are, but he could get a little more technical in his hands.
Yeah. To your point, some more precision in that initial punch, right? And making sure you're striking in the right spot so that you can mitigate the fact that you don't have the longest arms. Of course, he's playing center, so it's not as big an issue, but those savvy interior defensive linemen can take advantage of that. I echo your sentiments regarding his ability to get to the second level. But again, it's the same thing. Like it just sometimes, okay, you got there. It's really impressive in terms of how quickly he moves at his size, but sometimes you don't bring your feet with you once you get to your spot, right? And then you allow the defender to break away and make a play on the ball carrier. So it's not for a lack of athleticism. I think it's just a matter of just finishing. You know what I mean? Now, we didn't talk a lot about his pass sets here, but I thought once he dropped anchor, it's a wrap. If he's locked in and he drops anchor, I don't see guys being able to really create anything off of a secondary move or what have you. I think he does a really good job of understanding where the blitz is coming from. Georgia did a terrific job in terms of sliding protection, and that starts up front with the center in terms of calling out those protections. So headsy player, He's going to go high. Again, to your point, Headley, not sure if he's going to be center one when it's all said and done, but
Center one.
certainly, certainly will be in the conversation. All right. So we move on to the defensive side of the ball here, and let's talk about Javon Bullard as Drew has him up here, as you can see, listed at 5'11", 183. Headley, I'm gonna start with you. Your thoughts on Bullard?
Yeah, they got a couple guys secondary. They got Bullard and Lassiter, but Bullard is, I think he's like a safety corner hybrid. He plays a lot in the slot, plays with aggressiveness and intensity. You know, he's kind of like a pseudo linebacker sometimes. He plays in the box, he makes plays in the backfield. He has no fear. You know, he's quick. He sees it and he has no fear. So he's gonna take on those big bodies and get in the backfield. He has good closing ability in pass coverage. I like his kick and close ability there. So, you know, he's just one of those guys that's always around the football for these guys. And then the other corner, Lassiter, he's mostly primarily the right cornerback. He'll come up and tackle as well in the short screen game. He likes to get his hands on the receivers a lot, but at the next level, you know, you got to take your hands off the receiver. You're going to get called for holding, pass interference, and things like that. And, you know, receivers get behind him a lot. So, you know, something to watch for this upcoming season with Lassiter. Both of these guys, Bullard and Lassiter, big-time DBs over here at Georgia.
Before you get to your point, I want to ask both of you. For Bullard and Lassiter, what do you see their roles being at the next level?
I would imagine Lassiter will probably end up being a corner, but Bullard, I don't know, because he's 5'11", 180. The way they're using him, it's gonna come down to probably team visit, because I you know, unless they change his role this year, right? And I don't know that's going to take place, because he was a guy. He looked like he was lining some folks up, getting guys where they needed to go in terms of where they needed to line up. I know. I think it was in the Ohio State game. Somebody blew a coverage, or maybe it was LSU game. I can't remember what game I was watching. They blew a coverage, and he was yelling at both safeties, talking, "Hey, we missed this." He was calling it before the play had happened, and then I think he ended up committing a penalty because of it, to keep them from scoring. But yeah, Bullard, I'm not sure, because of how they use him. You know, he plays like a linebacker. The problem is he plays like a linebacker. He's like a tweener. He's lower than a tweener because he's 185. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to figure out. But he'll come up, like Ellie said, he'll strike somebody. In pass coverage, he's got some things to work on. Man, he has the speed and the twitch and the short area quickness that you want. But damn, bro, that technique is awful in coverage, bro. He'll go and grab. I'm watching. I'm like, I can't even. Get caught flat-footed. It's like I got the speed to catch up. But if you're playing better receivers, that speed really doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? Especially if I give you a little, you know what I mean? You're not be able to grab me, or I'm too strong for you to grab and slow down. You know, it's just, I don't know, man. But if he cleans up that technique, he can sit in the slot. He can live in the slot, but he's just got to clean it up, man.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Drew. I think Lassiter is probably outside corner. That's where I see him. But like you said, Bullard is, you know, a team will have to develop a plan of where to play him. He could be a slot corner. He could play safety. Like I said, I don't think he's big enough to kind of be a linebacker or anything like that. He had to put on a lot of weight. But, yeah, the safety, you know, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, safety, slot hybrid. Yeah. That's kind of what I see for Bullard.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the way the game is going, we're seeing a lot of too high, right? So if you're a safety, you have to be able to play too high. So can Bullard do that on a consistent basis? That's going to be part of the question. Is he more effective closer along the line of scrimmage, which certainly to this point he has been. So does that mean he plays more nickel? Well, of course, you're going to face some slot receivers that could do some damage from the nickel. So that's why I asked the question. Where do you see these guys ultimately ending up at the next level? How do you maximize their skill set? And of course, we may not know. It doesn't appear that we know just yet. We're going to need to see a little bit more development, certainly from Bullard, to make a better determination there. Anybody else on this Georgia roster you guys want to discuss before we get into Name That Player, our new trivia game?
You got your boy Mondone, the linebacker. Mondone, he flashed a little bit last season. It's not like the season before with Georgia. You know, so a lot of these guys are at the next level. So, you know, we'll see the younger guys there as well. But the draft eligible guys, you got Kendon Milton, the running back. He's like I said, he's not like the older Georgia running backs, but we'll see where he lands at the next level.
There's a safety. He's not quite draft eligible, but there's a
Oh,
safety there that's on his way. 2025. He's on his way, but we'll save that. We'll save that for another time.